Game of Thrones, the card game. I acquired the first edition of the game a couple of years ago, I believe in a trade, and then somehow I forget that I had it. It blended into the background with other games on the shelf. Also, at the time I had not read the books or watched the TV show yet, so it wasn't a game about the franchise that was dear to me. It was just a game that I had heard about, so I forgot about it. Things change lately for two reasons. Last year I did read all of the novels of the Song of Ice and Fire and I enjoyed them immensely. I also tried to watch the TV show, but I wasn't too excited about it. It felt a little bit like a summary of the book, missing all of the depth and complexity that I like so much about the book. So I'm not watching the TV show. By the way, that means that no spoilers. No spoilers about what's happening in the TV show. When you were watching a TV show, people that had read the books before did not give you any spoilers. I expect you, watchers of the TV show, to return the favor to those that do not watch the TV show and are just waiting for the new books. Understood? Now back to us. Things changed last year when I did read the books and I enjoyed them very much. So I became more interested in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, and also another important thing is that recently the new edition of the game came out, the Game of Thrones, the card game, second edition. There was a lot of buzz and excitement about it. At Gen Con 2015, I decided to purchase a copy from the booth of Fantasy Flight Games, and I played it. I finally tried it. So in this video, I'm going to share some ideas and opinions that I have about the game after trying it. Again, from a player that had not tried the first edition, so I cannot give you a detailed comparison of the two games, but from somebody who does enjoy the world of A Song of Ice and Fire very, very much, and also somebody who does enjoy good card games. So let's see how this game does. Game of Thrones, card game, second edition. The game includes 8 decks of cards, each with cards specific to one of the clans of the world of the Song of Ice and Fire, plus a deck for the Night's Watch. So here, for example, we have the Baratheon and the Night's Watch. This is because if you're playing the standard game as described in the rules, you will set up decks that are formed by the combination of the deck of 2 of the clans plus some neutral cards. And this is how I played the game so far, following the standard instructions in which you have a deck for Baratheon and Night's Watch, a deck for Tyrell and Lannister, a deck for Targaryen and Martell, and a deck for Greyjoy and Stark. So simply you shuffle all the cards together, and I also shuffled in the neutral cards that, again, the standard instructions suggested that I use. So these are pretty much pre-made decks, then you can follow specific instructions and directions to form your own decks if you so wish. But that's how I played the game so far. And I have to tell you, there is already enough variety here by combining different pairs in particular to keep you playing for quite a while. So each player gets a deck, again, of neutral cards plus cards specific to the Baratheon, for example, and the Night's Watch in this case. Shuffle all these cards together, then each player also gets a deck of plot cards. And again, here I'm using the standard decks of plot cards recommended in the standard rules. And each player places the deck by his play area. This deck is not shuffled because each turn you will get to select one. So actually, let's see how a turn works. In a turn, each player looks at their plot deck of plot cards and chooses one that will be the plot card for the turn. Let's say I decide to use this one. You commit to that one. Then you will have your hand of cards. At the beginning of the game, you get 7 cards. Then you can play your initial cards in your play area. These are cards that you develop at the beginning of the game. Cards have a cost here, and at the beginning of the game, you get to place down cards up to a total cost of 8. So I would be able, for example, to place down these cards, which is 7, and maybe I also want to put down these 2 cards here. At the beginning of the game, only locations, characters, and attachments can be played. Other cards, such as events, cannot be played. So players select their cards, they reveal them at the same time, and that forms the initial pool of cards that they have. Also, each player then replenishes their hands, just going back to 7, drawing from the deck as many cards as the player has placed here. So I would get 5 more. Once each player has selected a plot card and has his initial pool of cards, the game is ready to start. Players reveal their plot cards, so each player will have selected one. And the first thing that you do is you look at the second number, which is the initiative number. That tells you the order in which the turn will be resolved. So in this turn, this player that has the highest initiative will go first, and the second player with a 0 will go second. Next, players collect gold, the amount of gold indicated there, that would be 4, and that is all the gold that the players have to spend this turn, unless there are other game effects that will allow them. Here, the other player will get 5 gold, but gets to go next. Players look at their hand of cards, and they get a chance now to marshal cards, which is simply to play cards from their hand into their play area. And again, this is the cost. Now, as you can see, an average amount of money you get is 4 or 5. But there are cards that are much more expensive than that. There is 6 here. Robert Baratheon, since I'm using the Baratheon Nightwatch deck, he's even more expensive. I think he's 7 or more. Super expensive characters and a lot of free stuff and more affordable stuff. Which means that if you want to bring in the big guns, the main characters, the first tiers of the story, you need to put together some game effects. You can't save money from one turn to the other, because all the money that is left to you at the end of a turn is returned to the bank, to the main pool of money. That's how taxation works. They get whatever it is that you have left, which means that you will need game effects. For example, this card here in my play area gives me a +1, and I already have 5 then to spend. I still need an extra 1 to play Jon Snow. I need to figure out a way of combining some effects to get 6 if I want to play him, and if I play him, that's all I can play this turn, because I have 6 golds. Then if I spend all that, then I'm done. Luckily enough, there are also free effects. Another thing is that once you have played your cards, you spend your gold. So usually you may decide to spend all of it because you won't save it at the end of the turn. There may be game effects, however, that require the expenditure of money, and then for that reason only you may want to save some money to use some game effects during the turn. But remember, at the end of the turn, it's all gone. So in turn order, players marshal new cards. They bring them into the game. Suppose that these are the cards that I want to bring, and I decide to play this effect, which actually does give me some extra money. And once players have their play area with their cards, so we go to the main phase of the turn, which is the challenges phase. Again, in turn order, players can challenge each other using their characters and game effects. Characters have icons printed on them, and there are 3 types of icons representing a type of challenge that the character can participate in. The challenge for combat, intrigue, or power. And the number at the bottom is the strength. So this character can participate into combat and power challenges and add the strength of 2 to such challenges. Jon Snow only participates in intrigue challenges with a strength of 4, but also there is a powerful effect that he has, which allows him to vicariously participate into other challenges, to add his total to other challenges. As you can see here, the cards as well, Jon Snow is standing, because cards usually enter play standing, and usually when you use them, you kneel them. It's a very thematic way of saying you spend them. In most of the games, when you use a card, you turn it by 90 degrees to say that you spend it. Here they wanted to add some theme in showing that you kneel them to spend them. Some characters thinking of them as kneeling is a little weird, so I think of it as spending, but the terminology is to kneel a card. So, challenges phase. Players take turn taking their challenge phase. In the challenge phase, you can challenge other players up to once per challenge. So you can launch a combat challenge, an intrigue challenge, and a power challenge. By the way, all that I say in this game has an implicit note that says unless there is a rule that breaks that rule. Unless there is an effect that breaks that rule, because almost every rule can be broken by an effect. There are a ton of effects that are triggered by the cards. So for example, yes, there are cards that allow you to launch multiple challenges of a kind. Standard rules, no you can't. You can launch one per. When you launch a challenge, you kneel and you spend all of the characters that you want to use. Suppose that I want to launch a combat challenge, then I can use these two characters. I could also use that character, but I decide not to for reasons that only I know. I decide to use these two characters to launch a challenge, a combat challenge with them, and I indicate the player that I want to defend against. For example, I'm playing against the Targaryen Martell, and then I say, yeah, I'm targeting you. Now the Targaryen Martell can choose to do nothing, not to defend, because maybe the player doesn't have any card available with the right icons, or the player has cards and decides not to use them. In which case the challenge is unopposed, and of course I win. And when a challenge is won in an unopposed fashion, you gain a power point that you get from the pool of available power points, and you add it to your faction card, and it's stored there for later for scoring purposes. If the challenge is opposed, then the player that is defending against the challenge needs to kneel at least a character that can participate in that type of challenge. For example, for combat, it means icons with a combat value, like that one. Now, when a challenge is opposed, then you total the amount of strength that the players are contributing to the challenge. The player with the higher total wins the game, and in this game the attacker wins ties, which is unusual. Usually, at least in war games that I play, the defender tends to win challenges. So there's a game that encourages being aggressive, because as an attacker all you need to do is to tie to win. I say you total the strength. These two cards used together in a combat attack will generate an attack of 7. I'm disregarding the game effects now just to tell you about the game. And suppose that the defender is defending with 4, then the attacker wins. The defender knew that the defender would lose the challenge, but the list is opposing the challenge, therefore denying the power bonus to the attacker. This is the basic idea behind all challenges. It's just we did intrigue challenges. You kneel the intrigue characters that can participate in intrigue, and then with power, then the players with the characters with the power icons. Very important, you don't get to stand your characters back right after your challenges phase. So I challenged my opponent with these cards, the opponent responded with that card, and then all players will get to go through a challenges phase before any of the kneeled cards down are refreshed, which means that now the opponent may attack me with this card, the awesome Red Viper, which is a pretty powerful card. Maybe decides to use that card for combat. Now I have to defend against a combat challenge of 7. I decide to use this character here, which will lose the fight 7 versus 2, but at least I have denied the unopposed bonus. So that's what you need to keep in mind, that you can launch powerful challenges spending a lot of your characters, but that means that you will be then open to attacks and powerful attacks, and possibly open to unopposed attacks, in which case those may generate a lot of points to the opponent. You don't want to do that. So you have to choose your strategy. All-out attack, which leaves you defenseless or with weak defenses, more of a balance between attacks that you launch, challenges that you launch, and resources that you keep in store for defense. The winner of a challenge, if the attacker gains bonuses depending on the type of challenge. The defender usually doesn't get much, simply gets to prevent the opponent from winning the challenge. The defender usually doesn't get positive advantages, rewards. But the rewards for the attacker are pretty good. Now you look at the card, the plot card that is being used, and look at the last number, which is the claim number. Usually it is 1. For most cards it is 1. The number there indicates, how can I say this? The number of units of rewards that you get from winning a challenge. For example, when you win a combat challenge, you will get to kill characters of the opponent. The opponent chooses which ones. And you will get to kill 1 for each unit in the claim number. Which is, if you win a challenge, a combat challenge, with a claim number 1, you get to kill 1 character of the opponent. If the claim number were 2, you will get to kill 2 characters of the opponent. Higher claim numbers mean higher rewards during a challenge. So for combat, you get to eliminate a number of characters equal to the claim number. For an intrigue challenge that you win, you force the opponent to discard cards from their hand, again equal to the claim number. And for the power challenge, you gain power, again the number of power points equal to the payoff of the claim number. Which means, for example, if you win an unopposed power challenge, you will get a point from winning a power challenge and a point for the challenge being unopposed. That's 2. There are also characters with a special ability called Renown, and if they have the Renown and they participate in a challenge and they win, then they get a point, but the point is played directly on their card, not on the faction card. They're kind of like the point belongs to them. And something important that needs to be said about the power challenges is that the power that you gain in a power challenge for winning the challenge is taken not from the bank actually, but from the faction card of an opponent. After all players have launched their challenges and challenges have been resolved, that phase of the turn is over. You get to the dominance phase, in which you see who is the player that still has the most unspent power on the board, in the realm, to gain a political advantage. You simply total the strength of all characters that are still unused at the end of the turn. You add a point for each gold coin, such as this is another reason why you may from time to time want to save gold. And the player with the highest total has dominance for that turn and wins a point of power from the bank. After dominance, you finally refresh all of your characters, you discard all of the gold that you still had in your play area, and you may have to discard cards. You have to discard down to the number printed here in the bottom right corner. So you have some challenges which give a lot of resources. They're awesome. I mean, some pluck cards with a lot of resources. They're super awesome, but at the end they may punish you with a very low number here that pretty much indicates your hand size at the end of this turn. So you may have to discard down to that number, and then you simply repeat. This is how the game works. Players choose a plot card. Players then bring in new cards onto the board after they have collected money. They launch challenges, they determine dominance, and the game continues like this until either the opponent has no cards left in their deck, and that indicates the end of the game for that character. The card is out of the game, the player is out of the game. You lose the game when you have no cards left, or in any case you win the game when you have 15 points of power that you have accrued from various sources during the game. Now, I can't give you a detailed comparison of the differences in gameplay between the first and the second edition, but one thing, just looking at the cards for the first edition, that I noticed is that it appears that there is no discard number at the bottom of the plot card, so I assume that was not part of it. But something that I can do is a list, and I did, to have a quick look at the cards, and I have to tell you, the new cards look so much better than the old ones. The old ones had this white edge around them. The color palette was much more garish and cartoonish. The new art, sometimes it's the same art actually. This illustration does appear in the new edition too, in a different card, but the overall design of the new cards is so much better because the color palette is more unified. There is more of a balance among the colors. They look more somber, a little gloomier, which fits the theme, less cartoonish. I definitely enjoy the overall design. when it comes to the colors and the art, and this is for the plot cards. And when it comes to the main cards, not only what I said applies to the new cards too, the different parts just visually seem to blend better together. But when you look at the design of the cards, the old challenges symbols were here, now they're up here, which makes the card much more intuitive. This is where the important symbols in a card should be, the top left area. Nice improvement when it comes to the art. Just having a look at the old cards, I can tell you, I just like how the new cards look. Do I like the new gameplay better than the old ones? I haven't the foggiest idea, because I haven't played the old game. But I know that I like the gameplay of the new game very much. Per se, without comparison with the previous one, this is one fine card game. There is tension, there is intrigue, there is a plethora of options to explore, which is of course immense. I haven't even started mixing the decks and trying different combos. I just started with the pairings of the clans recommended in the rulebook. I guess that once I'm dying facing the Tyrell and the Lannister versus the Targaryen and Martell and the Greyjoy and the Stark, I can try to mix these clans, leaving them more or less untouched. I could try a strange alliance between two clans, but still keeping, say, the Targaryen clan together with the Lannister clan, or together with the Tyrell clan. Or I could try the Song of Fire and Ice, then the Targaryen together with the Stark. That'd be pretty crazy, right? And then I can experiment more by mixing cards from different sets, creating different factions. Now part of the Stark have aligned themselves with some members from one clan and some for another. So there's definitely an enormous amount of depth to explore there, which is something both exciting and a little bit scary. When you give players the option of creating their decks beforehand, there is always at least the possibility of the OCD player without much of a social life and with more free time than I have, that would be able to come up with some crazy algorithm with some unbeatable deck. The fear that the metagame may take over the game is always there to me. And it's frankly one of the reasons why I stopped playing Dust Tactics, which used to be one of my favorite games. Simply because certain combinations of units that could be put together before the game started almost determine how the game would go when the game started. So actually I like the fact that at least you have the option of playing with, these are the decks. Deal with them. Every player will start with similar decks. If you're playing with the Greyjoy Stark deck, this is what you get. The President of the United States would not be able to play with a better Greyjoy Stark deck than you have if you play with predetermined decks. I like that equality. Then it brings the outcome of the game and the quality of the performance where it should be, which is to the game itself rather than to the preparation of the game. And when you're playing the game is absolutely fun. It's a real blast to play. It's sort of like a slow engine that may take a while to really show you all that it can do. Not so much because the mechanics are complicated, they're really not. Choose a plot card, buy new cards, resolve challenges. Done. That's the majority. But and the subtleties that come out of that system are definitely interesting and relevant, and they're not too hard to figure out, which is great, which means you can get the general idea easily, but they are fun to implement. To see how to use those subtleties well is key. Subtleties, for example, about timing. It is obvious and common sense. Don't spend all of your cards at once. Don't spend them all in one place, because then you'll be weak later, but in reality that simple general idea can then be declined and can then be modified and simply implemented in so many crazy different ways. There may be a case where you do decide to launch a mighty attack and open yourself to the possibility of a powerful counterattack. Many different ways in which you can go for a more prudent approach this turn, spending that card and keeping that other one in reserve, and vice versa. I like that the general idea can then result in a huge amount of different tactics that may change from turn to turn. What makes this game a little bit of a slow engine, so it's not so much the application of general principles to the actual performance of gameplay, it is simply the astounding, overwhelming amount of game effects that you have to keep in mind, you have to keep track of, and you have to learn to be able to play the game effectively. So there is that learning curve, which is not so much about learning the mechanics of the game, which are straightforward, but about learning the interaction of all the cards, the ton of effects that have to be taken into account, how easily it is to forget a minor effect. There are all of these elements here which make learning the game a little more complex and fiddly feeling than naturally the game will turn out to be once you're familiar with. But the game per se, if you're willing to put a bit of effort into keeping the effects in mind and learning the effects and the combos, the game is so much fun because there's so much tension. Yes, mighty combos can be put together, and you're trying to do that. You should put them together. But at the same time, I did find that it is pretty hard between two players of similar experience to put together a single mighty combo that will devastate and turn the table in a single lucky turn of chance. You have mighty effects, but there are also ways of defending, of putting together a defense. The fact that it is the defender, for example, that chooses the character that is eliminated in a combat challenge, that's super important because that means that the first tier characters that come out, so that the opponent will want you to remove, have a better chance of surviving for a longer time as the secondary characters get eliminated by the opponent. But that also means that you have to keep thinking about what you're doing, meaning that you have to keep making sure that you have a buffer to protect your mighty characters so that the opponent doesn't take them out. It's a great game. It's a really remarkable game. So fun to play. Not easy to see all of the subtleties, but easy to pick up, and then if you're willing to learn the effects as you go along, there's just so much to explore here. Just with the base set you can play a lot. You can definitely have a lot of fun. It's not a game that after playing the base set I have the sense, well, this is just an introduction to the game, now I got a hint of how the game works. No, it's a full set, it's a full game. You can play a lot with that set without ever adding anything. Nevertheless, I am pretty excited to see what the new expansions and the new dimensions that the game will acquire once new material is released. So I'll keep an eye on the new releases for Game of Thrones, the card game, 2nd edition. As of now, just from playing the base set, I'm pretty pleased, and I have to tell you, this is really a fun game. I'm super excited, and I'm super happy that I have it now in my collection. And now I would like to take a moment to thank some backers of my Kickstarter campaign for 2015. They donated to the campaign and made it possible for me to acquire some of the games that I purchased recently and I am reviewing these days. Like good enchanters and wizards in a fantasy game, they stepped in the moment of need, lent a hand, and saved the day. The backers that I want to thank today are Lorinda Gale, the Enchantress, Raymond Lee, the Necromancer, Rick Thompson, the Wizard, and the Cardboard, the Jungle, the Mysterious Mage. Yes, he wrote the Jungle Cardboard because he scrambled the parts of his name around. He doesn't want the evil wizards to learn his name because there's great power in a name. Anyways, thank you to the 4 of you for donating to my campaign, and thank you all my viewers for watching.